Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your tactics and analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. I'm Josh Williams, and I'm joined by David Hughes. And Dave, we are about to go into another lockdown, mate, so prepare for regular updates about the state of your hair.
I was actually kicking myself that I never got an appointment in with the barbers before they come in, because today's the last day and there's going to be no chance getting one today. It's going to be like Christmas Eve or something, isn't it? So yeah, it looks like we're knuckling down again, batten down the hatches, and it's going to be a case of going long again, back to the early in the year. But yeah, I don't mind. It's only you and the thousands of people who watch this show on YouTube who'll see it. So.
Yeah, now I got in the other day, so I'm probably going to be covered for the 4 week period. Those that are listening outside of the UK, I know there's quite a few. I think we've got a few listeners on Australia and places like that. You're probably lucky compared to the UK, the way the UK's handled this crisis. But we'll move away from that anyway, and we'll move back to football.
Just on that really quickly, I watched, I think it was it Lokomotiv Moscow or someone to that effect? I feel really bad for not remembering. But I watched them against Atletico Madrid yesterday in the Champions League, and there was officially 8,000 in attendance. But either one, there was a lot more unofficially, or two, just that 8,000 were really thankful to be in the stadium. I was just brilliant, just listening to, like, watching a football match with that kind of emotion in the stadium again. It was such an eye opener how much we've missed it, and I was laughing to myself thinking, again, we don't want to get any political on this show, ball shows, but I was thinking, these are kind of returning to some form of normality, and we're just about to go into a second lockdown. It's sad times.
It is. I mean, I watched Chelsea last week in the Champions League against, I think it was Krasnodar, and they had fans in the ground. And just hearing the cheers when the goal's winning was great. I think, funnily enough, one of the games we're going to talk about now, the West Ham game, and obviously we're going to talk about Atalanta. It's been a good week for Liverpool, and we're going to look ahead to Manchester City. But funnily enough, in the build up to the West Ham game, I think David Moyes was asked about Virgil van Dijk and the fact that he'd be missing. And I think Moyes was more focused on the fact that Liverpool didn't have a crowd in the stadium, being a bigger advantage for West Ham, as opposed to Van Dijk being missing. So I think that basically is a testament to the current climate. But yeah, we might as well talk about West Ham first. I think we were pretty accurate with the way we painted it. It was just as tough as we expected, even though they didn't have Antonio. Was you at the game, Dave? Or
Yeah, I was at the game.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think you summarised it quickly really well. It did kind of go as we expected. Obviously, it was a tough game for Liverpool, but it was one that they definitely edged. I think they were deserving winners. But West Ham were really organised without. In fact, I thought West Ham were really organised without the ball, and were perhaps lacking that little bit of cutting edge with it. I don't know if that's a mix.
That's Antonio, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I know we'll. In fact, I don't know. Yeah, I know we were going to come on to Antonio, but just quickly on it, I thought Haller was really disappointing. I think he was one of the reasons West Ham weren't much of a threat in the attack. Even like, we've talked so much since Van Dijk's gone out about threat in the air, and I thought Antonio would really be a difficult customer for those aerial battles. And Haller, on paper, you think would put himself about a bit as well, but obviously 11 aerial duels, he lost 8. And he just didn't seem to get himself around the pitch very well. Whether you say that's a game or not doesn't really matter. I think when you've got to come in and try and replicate the performance of someone else, and he didn't really do it. But back to Liverpool, yeah, I thought Liverpool come out of a tough game as deserving winners.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Haller there, I might as well touch on him a little bit. I was actually quite excited to see him in the Premier League, but for whatever reason, I'm not sure if it's the surroundings of the club, the tactics, all that sort of stuff. But he hasn't looked anywhere near the player that he painted himself to be in Germany. Even if you're losing aerial duels, you can still put yourself about to the extent that it's at least difficult for opposing centre backs to get clean headers on the ball, and he weren't even really doing that. So I think Liverpool kind of got away with one there, coming up against a striker who, I don't know, the way he played, it was a bit like he was feeling sorry for himself a little bit, and you just can't really do that. You need to put yourself about. Mikel Antonio's the total opposite. Just running as a channel, relentless with the way he works. But the expected goals on the day anyway, Liverpool posted 1.8 XG, West Ham posted 0.5. And if you look at the shot count, West Ham seem to have this ability at the minute to no matter who they face, they make it difficult for them to get shots away. Liverpool only took 8 shots on the day. And considering, that's at Anfield, it's quite a low figure for Liverpool. At West Ham kind of sacrificed their own attack in the process and shot only 4 times. So it was quite in terms of the shot count, at least at both ends of the field, it was quite a quiet game compared to what we might normally see at Anfield. Like, I think Liverpool this season, according to our usual provider, StatsBomb, are averaging 17 shots per match. So to take 8 against West Ham, I do think we painted them before the game, didn't we, as the type of team that are just well drilled, well organised, difficult to break down, really.
Yeah, well, I actually think, in that especially the first half, it did feel like Liverpool were okay in the kind of first 2/3, but just couldn't seem to get it going in the attacking third. And I do think a lot of that comes down to how West Ham played and how good they were without the ball. I have to admit, I think as the game went on, Liverpool definitely started to find the stride. Sorry, I've got my dog there. I think Liverpool definitely did find the stride and were, as I said, I do think they were deserving winners, even though West Ham made them work for it.
Yeah, I think a big issue in this game, and it was the same the week before against Sheffield United, Liverpool keep conceding first, and we've spoke about this in the past. It's not a good thing. It has more of an impact on the match than probably many people would expect, to be honest. So Liverpool have played 7 Premier League games so far, and we've conceded first in 4 of them. And obviously the last 2 that we've conceded first in have been against well-drilled back 5 systems. So you are up against it. I think obviously we're gonna touch on the Atlanta game and Jota, but Jota mentioned in his post-match against Atlanta that the first goal that he scored was his favourite, and one of the reasons it was his favourite was because Liverpool then take the lead, and he said we can then manage the game our way. And I thought that was like an interesting little note for him to say, because I think Liverpool last season were the masters of doing that. Really, they just dominate match scenarios, take the lead, probably score a second, and then almost just kill the game without using up too much energy. So I think, despite not having Antonio on the pitch, which I do think is one of the reasons, like I said before the game, that West Ham were going to challenge Liverpool's ability to not only break down a good defensive team, but manage counter-attacks at the same time. Once I saw Antonio wasn't playing, I thought Liverpool were going to have to still break down a team, but without the managing counter-attacks threat. I didn't think that would materialise much, but even despite that, Liverpool conceded first.
Yeah. I mean, it is true, because it takes energy to chase a game, doesn't it? And you have to start. Suddenly the space disappears, because a lot of sides, when they've took that lead, just want to sit on that lead and see if they can see the game out. It very rarely happens. It's probably better to try and double up your lead, but it's easier said than done. But yeah, and I think that is really key. I mean, there's another way to look at it. Of course, you can really focus on the positives and look at it as the character to come back. There's a lot of teams out there whose record when going behind isn't good, because it's a big psychological blow, isn't it? Because suddenly you've got to score not 1 but 2 goals if you want to win the game, and that's provided that you only concede the 1. But what you will say about this Liverpool side is they never seem to let those psychological blows kind of impact, how they perform. it doesn't seem to completely obliterate the game plan, which you probably actually goes back to Klopp and how he structures the games for Liverpool, because I think a lot of teams go into games with a game plan and they don't really have that plan B if it doesn't go as it was expected to go, aka a goals conceded. But I mean, it's every home game Liverpool so far they've conceded first, haven't they?
I didn't even realise that that's the case. I'll have a little look now.
Yeah,
So
we got
West Ham,
Leeds.
Sheffield United, Leeds. No, I think we scored first against Leeds and then they equalised quite quickly.
Okay. Right, okay. Did they take the lead maybe then?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Against Arsenal, they did score first in that game, yeah. So it's certainly 3 out of the 4.
So 3 of the last 3 anyway.
Yeah.
Which, although it doesn't look good on paper, it's definitely something Liverpool need to fix for the reasons we've just said about wanting to almost get the results in the bag as quick as possible and kind of see the game out then in third gear. You've probably got to give a nod to the character of being able to overcome adversity, I guess.
One of the reasons that we conceded first, and one of the reasons that we keep having to deal with this problem, I actually tweeted about this during the game, but Liverpool have annoyingly conceded too many goals from shots on target, basically. So we've faced in the Premier League this season 28 shots on target. Only 14 of them have been saved. That's a 50% save percentage. Last season, Liverpool's save percentage was, I think, 70.1. And I think the worst in the league was Kepa with a save percentage of about 54%. So Liverpool's current average of 50% will increase, will get better with more shots on target faced and all that sort of stuff. But I think what I was getting at when I tweeted it, sometimes when with a stat like that, you'd probably look at the goalkeepers then and say, like, what are you playing at? We're suffering from poor goalkeeping, poor shot stopping. But I think more what I was getting at was just that this is quite unsustainable, and it feels like Liverpool are just, maybe it's me as a fan, but I like to think I'm able to separate myself from that sort of thing. It feels like Liverpool have had a really, really unlucky start to the season, to be honest. And if you think of certain little moments, like I think it was Sheffield United that got the penalty with the ball being on the very, very edge of the box, which I felt was quite harsh. And even the foul in the process wasn't really much of a foul from Fabinho. If you think of the Pickford moments, the Van Dijk injury, the offside goal in the derby with Mane getting ruled offside, even though it was 50-50 almost. Aston Villa, the deflected goals. Trying to think of other things. I mean, it's been one of them seasons really so far where I just think Liverpool have suffered from more bad luck than what is normal, and I just feel like the shots on target numbers kind of epitomise that a little bit, and it's just something that I think gradually it cannot continue really, and it will turn.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it will level out. What I will say it did feel a lot like last season. Liverpool should have conceded more goals than what they did. I think we might have covered it. I remember Dan Kenny, for people who are on Twitter would probably follow. He tweets a lot about Liverpool. He made a bit of a song and dance about it as well, in terms of the amount of big chances people were missing against Liverpool opponents. Now, a lot of that I think does come down to variables that can't really be captured in numbers, like good defensive pressure and things. But that being said, I do still think there was an element of luck. So maybe we were just seeing the kind of flip reverse of that. Obviously, another thing it's probably worth pointing out is if you look at Liverpool in the Champions League, they still haven't conceded a goal. And they may be the only team who haven't now, actually. I'll have to double check that. Maybe someone can look that up. But I think they're the only team left in the competition who haven't conceded a goal against some decent attacking side. So I guess the point I'm getting at is, yeah, it seems that they're conceding a lot in the league, but I expect that to mellow out. And if you actually look in the Champions League, you are almost seeing maybe what's to come in terms of that, the goals slowing down in terms of what's being conceded. So it's one to
Yeah,
watch.
yeah. No, I do agree. I think, a few of the responses that I had on Twitter, I did kind of say like the luck side of things, the fortune side of things, have kind of fancied Liverpool for a while. To be honest, whether Liverpool have been doing things under the radar to influence that remains to be seen. Um, obviously we've got a top quality keeper usually who plays. We've had Virgil van Dijk, who I think just his presence kind of puts opponents off a little bit. Liverpool have been able to get players around shot takers, which puts them off a little bit, I suppose. It can come down to just forcing every opposing player who's taking a shot onto his weaker foot, maybe. Just stuff like that can influence shots not being put away against you. But it just feels like at the start of this season, particularly in the Premier League, Liverpool are getting really punished for tiny things like against Leeds, for example. That's another example. In the first game of the season, we conceded 3 from 3 shots on target. I think every shot on target that Leeds had found a net. And these are just things that don't usually happen. So, I mean, despite this, Liverpool are still top of the table, and I think we've accumulated 16 points from a possible 21 so far. So I suppose it bodes well in a way, because we're still finding ways, still finding solutions to solve problems in the match, even if we go a goal behind. Whatever happens on the day. It's just something that I felt like I needed to point out, because rather than that stat being a goalkeeping thing, which it is to an extent, it does feel like it sums up Liverpool's fortune at the minute.
Mm. Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
I mean, we can move on anyway to Atalanta, because this was a much happier game.
Yeah,
even
much
though
easier watch.
even though we got 3 points in both matches. So, are you surprised, Dave, how this went? Because we predicted goals. I certainly didn't expect Liverpool to get every single one of them.
Yeah, I know.
But I thought Liverpool were outstanding, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's what it boils down to be honest. I think Liverpool were just outstanding. When you're the really top side, sometimes it just does all. It all clicks. All the moving parts come together, and you just become this kind of unstoppable unit. And I just think that's what they were last night. I think they were just so ruthless in attack that it literally blew Atalanta away. And I mean, I know you'll touch on the numbers shortly, won't you? But I'm just having a quick look at Liverpool. Liverpool's XG on the night was 2.9. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I just think if you side like Liverpool, who accumulate an XG like that with the players they've got in attack, then you can quite easily go and score 4 or 5 goals in one game, and that's
Yeah,
what happens.
yeah, no, that's it. And I think obviously we also accumulated 15 shots against Atalanta's 9. But it was one of them games where, strangely, virtually every shot seemed to hit the target. To be honest, Liverpool had 15 shots, but 12 of them hit the target. Atalanta had 9, 6 of them hit the target. So
Can I just say on that, Josh? Sorry, really
yeah,
quickly. I had a look this morning as well. That Atalanta had 9 shots, but 6 come after Liverpool were winning 5-0. So it's
oh,
kind of
okay,
like, yeah. So
okay,
it's probably just a little bit of boosting their numbers when the game's finished, pretty much.
yeah. But I think, I just think Liverpool turned up. Like I think a few weeks ago when when we were speaking about the Merseyside derby, the preview and that, I said that, like, when Liverpool know that they're in for a game against a proper good team, Liverpool really turn up usually, because they kind of embrace the challenge. And it felt like one of them games where Liverpool were well aware how good this Atlanta team were. Um, Stepped up to the challenge, and as a result of the level that got stepped up to, Atlanta just looked average, really. I mean, we painted them out to be a good attacking side. I think they showed themselves to be quite decent on the attacking side, but they did come across like quite an average European side. but they're not. They are a good team, and I think Liverpool just kind of blew them away. I think another thing in the past that I've spoke about, maybe even with dating back to the Christian days, was when I think when Liverpool faced these European teams, I think Liverpool's physical level almost just blows them away. Like Atlanta's defensive line in particular just looked so much slower than Liverpool's front line, which is a normal thing, but all over the park, I think when Liverpool are they're just on this physical level that I think few teams in Europe can match, especially given what they are used to week. Like if you watch Serie A, I don't watch it that often, but when I have, it does seem to just be generally the tempo's a lot slower. Hence why, aging players who are getting on at the back end of the careers tend to move to Italy, and you can get another few years out of the top five leagues because it's a slower league. So I just think Liverpool's physical level does a lot for them in Europe.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, you only have to look at some of the moves that's happened to Serie A over the last 18 months. You think of like Christian Eriksen. I think Victor Moses is over there now. Ashley
Ashley
Young.
Young, yeah,
It's players who definitely looked kind of, maybe that's a little bit harsh on Eriksen. I don't even think he's 30 yet, but obviously he was struggling to play for Spurs, but you're looking at players who definitely seem finished at this level, who are going on to play for not only Serie A sides, but top Serie A sides, like your Inters and things. So I agree. Yeah.
you could even put, and obviously he's nowhere near finished, but you could even put Cristiano Ronaldo in that bracket to an extent. I mean, I'm not sure how old he is now, 35, something like that. But it's no coincidence that the final few years of his career will be spent in Serie A as opposed to England or Germany or Spain.
I've just thought of another really good example, probably the best you'd get. Ibrahimovic, I think about 38, 39, isn't he? And
Yeah, I
he's
think he's
scored about
39.
16 goals since he's gone back to AC Milan.
Yeah,
This is just insane. So, but yeah, just back to the original point, I agree. One thing we did caveat it with, although I think just because of how good Liverpool were, this might seem a little bit unfair to bring this one up. But we did caveat saying that there is maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome with Atalanta at times, isn't there? Against, the top teams. And I don't know if maybe that played a part, but it's really hard to say because, as I said, it's always the case with Liverpool that you can't put in these performances every week because I just don't think it's sustainable. But when it all does come together, like it did last night, I just don't think teams can stop it. It can't be stopped. So I don't really think you can blame much of what Atalanta did.
yeah. It was one of those games, to be honest, where it does kind of reaffirm just how good Liverpool are. Although it can kind of get lost a little bit at times with certain vulnerable results or shaky moments or whatever. I think this kind of performance does just remind everybody that this is still Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. Yes, we've lost a central defender, but we've got virtually everybody else. Still Thiago to come back in, and it's just a really top football inside. I mean, there's no other way around it really. So yeah, you touched on the expected goals there. Liverpool posted 2.9 xG, which is fairly high to be honest. And then when you've got the likes of Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah putting the ball in the net, taking those shots, they're probably going to finish at a higher rate than I don't know, Mark Noble is. So
No,
you
we'd
can.
finish at a higher level than him, to be fair.
Atalanta posted bang on one expected goals. So to be honest, I think they should have had at least one, shouldn't they? I mean,
Yeah, I was about to say on another night they do probably score one, don't they?
yeah, on a Premier League day, considering Liverpool's luck in the Premier League at the minute, that match probably ends 5-2. But I think we were fairly justified in our predictions that it was going to be a match that featured goals. I did think that they'd get one or two, but to be honest, there's a pass shot where he drags it back past Gomez, who slides beyond the ball, and he hits the crossbar or the post, and it somehow doesn't go in the net. I don't know how that didn't find the net, to be honest. That was some effort.
Yeah, it was.
Um,
He come
but
alive a little bit, didn't he, in the end?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think he got much service at the start, to be honest. But
Mm,
he was a handful of a player. Um, and Liverpool's front three, obviously, I've just mentioned them there. The front three took 11 shots, and every one hit the target. Every shot hit the target. I don't think that's a usual thing, to be honest.
mm,
Um, but I've just said the front three took 11 shots. The front three, Dave, but not including Roberto Firmino. It was Diogo Jota who started. This
mm,
is obviously the big talking point. This is probably what people want us to get to. He
mm.
was, he was, he was outstanding. He was incredible, to be honest. Scored a hat trick, and even his all-round game was just faultless, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. You know, when we talked about him in April about the potential Liverpool signing, we were talking about being on the left. But the beauty is he's so versatile. Obviously, he comes in the brackets number 9 role last night, and I just thought he played it really well. You know, he seemed to drop off the line well. He was really aggressive. I thought his movements, you know, off the shoulder of the defender was brilliant. You know, the way he seemed to body feint in to get himself on side, but almost
Yeah,
use it
yeah,
as a spring to get a run on the defender. I just thought he looked fantastic. He kind of seemed to bring everything that Firmino brings to the game, but then had that clinical edge that I think Firmino was lacked for a little while. It was a really good performance.
yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. When we did sign him, I have always viewed him as a wide forward, to be honest. And when Klopp named the team, I was a bit like, I'm intrigued to see how this works because you've got a front three there, all of whom are inclined to almost run away from the ball as opposed to come towards it. And with that being the case, that can sometimes result in structural issues because the midfield is completely separate to the forward line and you've got no one linking the play on the edge of the final third and all that sort of stuff. So Jota ended up playing through the middle predominantly. Um, but the way in which he did do what Firmino's usual things, as in, retreating into midfield, offering like a bit of glue of sorts, obviously leading the press, and not maybe taking as many risks on the ball with his passing as Mane and Salah do. I just thought he was brilliant. He really did play it like he's been playing it for years. He played it like it wasn't a particularly hard role to execute, even though I think it is. You've
Mm,
got, I think to perform that role, you've got to have really good, 360 awareness of what's going on around you because you're receiving the ball between the lines and it is tricky. And I was really impressed by how he was able to do much of what Firmino usually does, while also bagging a hat trick and posing a threat in behind when the opportunities presented were presented to him.
mm.
Uh, so to be honest, he is becoming a bit of a problem. It's a good problem, but he's asking questions now of Klopp, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. It's absolutely bonkers to think that he wasn't playing for Wolves at the start of the season. He couldn't get in the team. You know, Nuno wasn't playing him there because I think he's always been a talent. I thought this was pretty phenomenal, Josh. You may have seen it because it was actually something doing the rounds as opposed to something I found. But I'll share it now just in case you haven't seen it yet. But yeah, since the start of last season, Diego Jota's. Are you ready for this?
Go on,
he's had he's
love
had
to hear it.
68 shots with his left foot and 66 shots with his right foot. Um, which it's
So
basically completely even almost. But bear in mind, he's had 4 more shots with his left, and he's traditionally a right-footed player, which
yeah,
is
that's quite insane. I mean, we did flag that he was 2-footed.
mm,
Um, Yesterday, 2 of his goals were scored with his left foot, one with his right. Um, Funnily enough, previously before that, the goals he scored against Sheffield United and Arsenal and all the goals before yesterday, to be honest, he'd scored with his right foot for Liverpool. So he is just mixing it up, and he is that kind of almost ambidextrous player, really. And I
mm,
think that's another real perk if you're playing through the middle as a kind of 360 awareness Firmino type player. If you can go left, you can go right, you can use both feet. It's going to really benefit you. But he's looking outstanding. He's averaging a goal. I think he's played about 500 minutes so far for Liverpool in Champions League, Premier League, and Carabao Cup. And he's averaging a goal, not a goal or an assist, a goal every 71 minutes. I'm looking at him from my fantasy team. But he's just looking like a real player. He's making a quicker impact than I thought he would have made. Yeah, I don't really know what more to add on him. He's really impressive.
He's almost he's kind of the profile, and he's becoming the player that everybody expected Timo Werner to be. And the reason why Liverpool wanted to sign Timo Werner, Jota's basically become that person. I think he's filled that void. Obviously, it's early days. Don't want to put too much pressure on, of course. We're only in November, but just from what we've seen so far, it's it kind of feels like Liverpool got a good deal there.
Yeah. No, I still think Timo Werner's brilliant, but there's certain aspects of the Jota deal that I think we have got one up, really, almost. The fact that he's a lot more two-footed than Werner. The fact that Liverpool are only paying, I think it's something like 4 million in this first initial year for him. I think he's a year younger, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong in saying that, but he's just looking like a top player. I think the reason he started this game, I personally thought, I don't actually think it was due to form. I think he was more starting this game for me because Atalanta used a bit of a man marking system. So if you've got a fluid front three, it was just kind of all over the place. You're going to cause them more problems than if everyone's a bit more fixed than normal. And B, obviously their defensive line was not very fast, and they are inclined to keep a fairly high line without really pressing the ball. So you're getting space in behind. Josh is going to be more of an issue for Atlanta attacking that space in behind than Firmino would be. So I felt like, the front three that was selected for this game, but was selected for Atlanta, really, to cause Atlanta problems, which I don't think will always be the case. But just because of how well he played and how well he did the Firmino stuff as well, he is posing a problem for Klopp in terms of the selection of his 11 ahead of the Man City game, which we will get to. Unless you have anything more to add on Jota, Dave, I think another little interesting stat was that it's his second goal, I think it was, when he takes it down from the sky with his left foot and volleys it in with his right, which I thought was his best goal on the day. That was assisted by Joe Gomez. Gomez's first assist since 2017-18 against, funnily enough, Everton.
I don't remember. What was it?
I don't remember it, but I'm assuming he was playing fullback, and something will have happened. But usually,
I wonder if it was that one Salah, where Salah comes up against Martina. It might have been, and he kind of like
maybe.
Yeah, it might have been that one.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, but I think Gomez is out of the whole 11, including Alisson. To be honest, I think Gomez is the least inclined to play the last pass and to get an assist. So I think it's maybe summing up how he's stepping up a little bit, playing a few more long passes in Van Dijk's absence and all that sort of stuff. But I think it was a top performance, one of Liverpool's best performances of the season. 5-0 over the top attacking side, another clean sheet, and it takes us in good form to probably the biggest game of the season so far. I think you can probably say, against Manchester City. So, general thoughts ahead of the fixture, Dave?
It feels a little bit different this year, because I think there's all different things impacting it, but it felt like over the last 2 seasons, the title could have maybe been won and lost. Obviously, it didn't work out like that last season, but it felt like it going into the game. It felt like the title could very much be decided over these 2 fixtures, whereas this year, it just feels like there's going to be more twists and turns, more slip-ups, unexpected slip-ups, because of how the league is and, the circumstances that we're in with the games thick and fast. So it's strange, but it feels very bizarre. neither team feels as invincible as I think they did in previous times. And I'd actually argue City more so than Liverpool. I think they've just lost the fear factor a little bit, maybe for lesser teams at least. So it feels like a strange one, this.
Yeah, it does. I think both teams in the past 2 years or so have just had so much control over the pitch. Both teams leave so little to the elements of chance and stuff like that. That it was just kind of two complete teams coming up against each other with, even the weaknesses of both teams. For other sides in the division, they wouldn't be weaknesses. It's that kind of stuff. But this season, I think both teams are a little bit more fragile than normal. I actually looked at City's numbers. I'm sure you've seen them on the agenda, Dave, but they're not as good as I thought they were going to be, to be honest. I mean, Guardiola's teams have just historically posted brilliant performance numbers, to the extent that they just deserve to win virtually every match. And it's why they win leagues, because when you're posting such good performance numbers, you might get a penalty given against you, you might suffer from bad luck, you might suffer from an injury, you might suffer from a bad refereeing decision. But when your performance numbers are that good, you're kind of insuring yourself against any randomness in a game by just performing so well. But so far this season, expected goals per 90, excluding penalties, City is 7th, which is quite surprising. Liverpool, for perspective, are top. I'll get up the rest of that in a sec. City is 2nd for shots per 90. Liverpool, as I said before, are averaging 17. City, I think, are averaging about 15.4 or something like that, it might have been. But the reason that they're 7th for XG, despite being 2nd for shots, is because the shots that they're creating, they're just not that good. So you can kind of put a number on that using expected goals per shot, and their expected goals per shot is quite bad, to be honest, which suggests that the average shot that they're generating, it's maybe not from such a clear-cut location. It's not a tap-in as it has been in the past. Obviously, they haven't really had any strikers for a few games. They've lost David Silva and have replaced them with Phil Foden and Ferran Torres, who good players, but they're not David Silva, not yet at least. So yeah, I mean, have you got any thoughts on those numbers, Dave? I thought they were quite interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there's a few contributing factors. One of which, as you said, is the fact they haven't really had a striker, and their system does play with a forward. It needs a proper forward in there. They've tried to adapt it a little bit, but I don't think it's always worked. Bringing in the likes of Sterling in that position. Because it's not just about scoring goals. I think it's just about the movements that these players make. Because we're talking about the best of the best. You think of like Aguero and Jesus to an extent as well. They kind of create openings for others and windows for passes to be made into the penalty area and get a little bit closer to goal. And without that, that's been the issue. You touched on the decrease in XG per shot compared to last season. I looked into this about a week ago, and yeah, the XG per shot average has dropped, but the average distance from where they're shooting is increased by about maybe 3 meters or so, which might not sound a lot, but it does impact the quality of shots. Obviously, the closer you are to goal, normally the better your chances are. And if you're shooting from further away, then the chances are that you're not going to convert as many, and they're not going to be of a lesser quality. And that's what's happening so far. That being said, more of a basic look beyond just the performance indicators. If we just look at results, it does seem that they've started to kind of hit a little bit of form. Now, I'm having a look at this is all competitions, of course, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, they're undefeated in 8 games since that kind of massacre, at home to Leicester, and they've drew 2 of them. But beyond that, they are getting back to kind of winning ways, and maybe they're going to start taking a leaf out of Liverpool's book and grinding out victories as opposed to just trying to completely dominate and put 4 or 5 goals past teams. Just maybe slow it down a little bit and just get the victories and get the wins.
Yeah, I mean, they've kept 3 clean sheets in a row now, including the Champions League games, but I don't think Marseille and Olympiacos really laid much of a glove on them. Marseille didn't actually have a shot. I'm just looking at that now. Marseille's expected goals on the day was naught. So let's have a look at this. I'm going to say so shots. Marseille had, well, there must be an error there because Marseille had 2 shots. So unless they were from the halfway line or something, you shouldn't be posting an XG of 0. So that's probably a bit of a weird thing that Statspom needs to have a look at. But just a little bit of perspective on the XG per shot thing. So top of the league at the minute for XG per shot are Leicester and Spurs. According to that metric, their average shot has about a 14% chance of finding the net. Then you got Liverpool and Everton in joint third, with 0.13, so that's a 13% chance of Liverpool and Everton's average shot finding the net. City's is an 8% chance of finding the net. Now, there doesn't seem to be much in that, really, when you think about it. Not that much difference between 8% chance and a 13% chance, but in football in terms of the years, that's quite a big jump. If you picture one shot that gets an XG value of about 13% compared to another shot that gets an XG value of about 8%, the 13% chance will be considerably more open than the 8% chance one. And just for a little bit more perspective, because Liverpool fans, I'm sure, will want to hear this, the worst in the league, out on their own, Manchester United. XG per shot for them is 0.06. They're the only team with 0.06. So the average shot that United generate has a 6% chance of finding the net. Over the years, they've had a tendency to just shoot from anywhere, really, haven't they? So that's probably where that's stemming from. But yeah, I think for Liverpool's defence, I suppose it bodes well a little bit that City aren't generating absolute tap-ins like they were before. But obviously, Gabriel Jesus played last night. We're recording this on the Wednesday. He scored as well. He's probably going to play in it, isn't he, Dave? Do you reckon?
Probably, yeah. I think he's inclined to maybe start with him, and then maybe give him an hour and see where he is, as opposed to having him on the bench. Especially with him playing and scoring last night, it just makes sense. And as I said, having that forward on the pitch is quite important for their system.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about City's results there. I look at the results. I look at the performance numbers that they were posting with those results, and in most games they are doing enough to win. Probably they are doing enough to get 3 points. It's just that they're not doing as much as we used to seeing them do. Like against the Olympiacos, Dave. That's the first game all season, including. Oh no, it's not excluding the Carabao Cup. So that's the first game all season in the Premier League and the Champions League that they've posted an XG of 2 or more. They posted bang on 2 against Olympiacos, and before that, their previous highest was 1.9, 1.5, 1.8, 1.4. And I just think in previous seasons, City were kind of just putting the result into more certainty by posting even higher figures than that. So it does look like that attack's taking a little bit of a hit lately.
But what I will say to that, though, do you remember when we kind of said though that they had a way of how can I word this, almost inflating the because for those who don't know, City, no matter what Liverpool do, always seem to be finished top, don't they, in terms of XG rankings. And we always we come to the conclusion, I think, if I remember correctly, that's because they just seem to obliterate teams and keep going and going and going and really, pad out their numbers, whereas Liverpool are a little bit more smart in how they play. They get the results in the bag and then knock it down to maybe third gear. I just wonder if could there be an element of City doing that over these last kind of few weeks.
Yeah, it's possible, especially given the current times, the lack of pre-season, the fact that Guardiola's had De Bruyne suffering from a little bit of burnout. Aguero was rushed back a little bit. Jesus has been injured. I think Sterling's being the only real nailed starter who's been available all season so far. So yeah, it could be like that. It could be something in that. But ahead of the game, I've just mentioned Jesus there. Ahead of the game, I think there's a few question marks attached to a few players. So, do you start Matip in this game? He was on the bench against Atalanta, and he does have this thing whereby he can come in every now and then, act like he's never been out. Do you play Phillips? Do you play Jesus? Thiago even? And obviously, probably the biggest question: do you start Jota? Do you leave Firmino on the bench, despite this being Manchester City? Liverpool's pressing and defensive organisation will have to be spot on. What you do with you, Dave?
It's tough. I'll be honest. I'd be inclined to go with Jota in that game. I just think he's proven he can kind of work within the dynamics of how the team play. He knows how the mechanics work. But then he's also got his own individual merit as well. He's a threat. It does feel like over the last 12 months, Firmino has done the role that he needs to do for the team, for everyone around him to benefit. But he has lacked his own. Put this way, Firmino's running in on goal 1v1. You're not necessarily backing him, are you? I don't mean that to sound too critical, but you're not. If that opportunity presents itself to Jota, I would be backing him. I'd fancy his chances. And it could be a lot tighter then. Well, in fact, it's going to be very tight, I think, the game on Sunday. And it could come down to a goal. And if that chance falls to either Jota or Firmino, you're probably wanting Jota to be on the end of it. So I think all that considered, I'd start Jota.
Yeah, it is tricky. It really is. I mean, ahead of the Atalanta game, I think the person I was with, or I was thinking about tweeting it or something. I remember thinking to myself, Jota could score 100 goals here, and Firmino will still start against Manchester City away at the Etihad. He just will. But just because of how well he played, and the fact he played a lot like Firmino does in certain moments, while also scoring 3, it is a big problem that Klopp's going to have to find a solution to. I mean, one of the perks of Jota over Firmino is that he's a lot quicker. Do you look at Manchester City's defence and perceive that defence to be as vulnerable running backwards as Atalanta? That's one for Klopp to answer. I don't think they're particularly fast. I think obviously Kyle Walker is. I'm not sure about Ruben Diaz, to be honest. And I think the Port's just, I suppose, relatively average. So, but I think that, the pace and the fact that he'd be more inclined to finish one chance if he was presented with it, and he's probably in better form. I think they're probably the 3 main things Jota's got over Firmino at the moment. But in terms of what Firmino's got over Jota, I'd say obviously he's more experienced in this game in particular. I'd say he's more well drilled on the defensive side. Obviously, they're both really good pressers, but I'd say Firmino's more he's just got the system more naturally ingrained into his game. But other than that, I'm probably struggling, to be honest. Maybe he's better in the air. I think Firmino comes back for set pieces to defend set pieces and stuff like that. But it really is a tricky one.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. One of the things a little bit easier. I probably wouldn't rush Thiago back for this game, which might sound a bit bizarre to some, but I know he's fantastic. But I think he's not necessarily essential for this. And if he's touch and go, I'd start him on the bench because I think he would have been better in that West Ham game, for example. I think that would have been where Liverpool could have really done with him. Whereas in this game, I feel like they can do fairly well without him. So I think that one's a little bit easy. I'd probably start Thiago on the bench. But yeah, just back to Jota, mate. I'd start him personally.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. What about Matip?
I don't know. I suppose I would, for the reasons that you've just been making the case for Firmino. Obviously he's got that big game experience. He's played in these fixtures before. I thought Phillips was really, really good last week.
He was, yeah.
And I remember correctly, I could have it wrong. Was Phillips brought in for the FA Cup Merseyside derby last year as well, or is that some?
I can't remember, to be honest. I just
I
know he
know
spent a
some.
few seasons on loan. He spent a bit of time in Germany and stuff.
So maybe someone will be able to say in the comments, check that out when it goes live. But anyway, yeah, Phillips obviously come in, done really well, man of the match on the day. But I just think Matip's been here before, and he's, we know he's strong in the air, and yeah, I think he's just a little bit more of a. I guess the term would be what, reliable shoulders. I don't know. I'd probably bring Matip in, to be honest, Josh. You?
Yeah. I think I'd use Matip for this one-off game, to be honest. I think it'd be different if Phillips had played well in 4 consecutive games, but the fact that Phillips isn't registered for the Champions League, and it's been kind of Reece Williams, Phillips, then Reece Williams, then Phillips, for the games that we've played or whatever, I think Klopp will be well within his rights to just start Matip and no one really bats an eyelid. Thiago, I'd love to see him start the game, but I am inclined to agree. I do think that he's probably, say for example, Liverpool are a goal down on the hour mark. He's a great player to bring on, even if Liverpool are a goal up, to be honest, because the way he just keeps the ball, the way he's able to kind of instigate a degree of control over the pitch. I think he's just, as well as being a ridiculous player to start, he's a really useful sub to use as a bit of a problem solver in certain moments. I do think Jesus starts, and Jota is the big question mark, to be honest. But looking back at his Wolves time, he was kind of like a form player, wasn't he? He'd have these big mad bursts, and he'd score 2, then he'd score 2 again, then he'd score 2 again, then he'd score 1 and assist 2, and then he'd go missing for a few months at Wolves. So I don't know if this is just him stepping up at Liverpool or him having one of those bursts. But if he's having a burst, I suppose you've got to use it.
I'll be honest, I'm more inclined to think it is a burst. And I obviously rate Jota, talked about a month ago about coming to Liverpool and what a good sign he'd be, but I don't think this is him hitting like Salah, Mane numbers now consistently. He might prove me wrong, of course, but I do inclined to think he's just in really good form. It's all going in for him at the moment. So take advantage of it while you can. And obviously don't then expect it to happen every week.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit Salah, to be honest. When Salah first came to Liverpool and everything he touched kind of turned into gold, and he found a net with every shot almost. It does feel a little bit like that with Jota at the minute. It feels like he can't miss. I'm not sure how many shots he's taken for Liverpool so far. I'll try and check that out now while I'm speaking. But it feels like every shot he's having is finding the net, and obviously as good as that is, it's at the same time a bit unsustainable, isn't it? But at the same time, again, with this being such a crucial game and he's coming off the back of a hat-trick, if you want to use that unsustainable period to just get more goals out of him and that sort of thing, then, I suppose you can't really argue with it. You'd have to start him almost, but it really is a difficult one.
Yeah, use it to your advantage whilst you can, I guess.
Yeah. So, I can't really check it, to be honest. We'll leave it there anyway, so...
Well, let's be honest, we're going to be talking about him again over the next few weeks, so we'll be able to do it then.
Yeah, so your verdict then with this match, Dave?
I actually do fancy Liverpool, I know the record at the Etihad isn't great, is it? But I don't know, I just think it's all kind of flowing a little bit better for Liverpool now, and they seem to have this extra drive without Van Dijk. I don't know if it's, to prove a point. I feel like I've heard Klopp maybe, I saw something shared which almost said that. Maybe Klopp said that behind the scenes. Don't know how official that is, but yeah, it does feel like Liverpool just have got that extra bit of motivation. So I do actually fancy Liverpool to nick this. I'm going to go 2-1.
Okay. It's away at the Etihad. I might lean towards 2-1 myself, It feels like a difficult one to predict. It feels like it's going to be maybe a bit more conservative than usual. But then at the same time, given just the general mindset of Klopp and Guardiola, maybe both of them will just think, we'll just kind of see a wounded animal and just go for it. And if that happens, I suppose it's going to be a shootout, and it could go anyway when that sort of thing happens, when you've got two quality attacks like this. But yeah, after seeing Liverpool midweek, the level that they were at, I'm going to lean towards 2-1, I think, as well. But it is a difficult one to predict, to be honest.
What are you expecting game-wise? Right, not result, just what are you expecting as a game? Are you expecting it to be tight, or are you expecting it to be free-flowing? I'll tell you what, I'm weirdly expecting it to be tight.
No, I am as well. I don't think it'll be free flowing. I don't think it'll be anything like the last time we went there, and I think we lost 5-0 after winning the title. I don't think it'll be anything like that. But then at the same time, like with it being tight, obviously both that'd mean both offences are assuming the spotlight as opposed to the attacks almost. And I don't think neither manager would want that. I think both managers will want their attacks to be in the game more than normal. I don't know.
Here's an interesting one. I suppose I'm Manchester City writer over at the MEN. I asked him what he thought what would be happening Sunday in the game. Like, basically, I bug him every week because I have some City players in FPL. I want to know if they're going to play or not. But I don't know if this was him getting a feel from Guardiola or maybe just him, giving his 2 pence. But he was saying that there might be a temptation to have Nathan Ake in at left back because he's a lot better defensively, but he just doesn't have that same attacking intent, which I thought was quite interesting, because if Guardiola did go with that, then you probably assume that he's going to be a little bit more defensive than attack orientated, and send a message probably before the game.
Yeah, I think he did that against Arsenal, to be honest. I think it was to do with Arteta's system, because I think Cancelo played on the opposite side, but and he was kind of like a defender / midfielder hybrid type thing in typical Guardiola overthinking fashion, to be honest. I hope that he overthinks this one, because I don't think it does his players many favours. I think sometimes he's a bit too deep with it. But it really is difficult to predict it. I feel like if Jota starts and we've got a front three with that speed, I feel like it will maybe go back to the early Klopp versus Guardiola, City versus Liverpool days, whereby City have the ball and they're trying to break Liverpool down, and Liverpool are just waiting for the stray pass before counter-attacking at great speed. Because I think obviously if you've got Jota in there over Firmino, you've got 3 players there who are all lightning, all of whom can rotate positions, and so maybe it'll be a bit more of a counter-attacking game than we've seen Liverpool play in quite a while. But it really is a difficult one to predict at the moment, to be honest. But we'll leave it there anyway. We'll round up. So we'll be back next week to talk about the City game, and considering it's an international break, maybe there'll be a Q&A. Maybe that'll be the week later. We'll see what happens. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Cheers, everyone.
And we will be back next week, hopefully, to talk about a Liverpool win. See you next week.